Today we're going to talk about the question, the age-old question, does size really matter? But of course I'm talking about the size of your gear, your package, your tool that you use in filmmaking obviously. So let's break this down a little bit. What am I actually talking about? One thing I've noticed as a filmmaker is there's this progressive move towards just making everything smaller. When we look back in time on film sets and even now to this day, you'll see gear, large cameras, large rigs, set up with loads of additions onto the actual camera package or lighting fixtures and cranes and all sorts of craziness. But one thing that I've been observing recently that's been happening in the world of filmmaking is this move towards much more compact, smaller gear. In the past, even to use any piece of gear, it was large and bulky, heavy, cumbersome, and it required multiple people. But over the years, I've observed a progressive move towards the gear becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And I've been thinking about it more recently because I think this trend is going to continue and I'm intrigued to see where it actually goes to. If we just look at mirrorless cameras from the early Canon 5Ds back in the day, all the way through to the more up-to-date R5s, to the Sonys with the compact A7 series as well, you're getting so much in such a tiny package now. But it isn't just for that kind of prosumer end, it's also for the professional end. When I first got into filmmaking, even in the cinema camera world, there were still those super high-end ones that needed a lot of hands on deck to actually manage them. But Canon started to introduce the C series with the C200, 300, 100, and Sony started bringing out some versions of their own, like the FS7 and the FS5. But those cinema cameras were still relatively bulky. However, even in the world of cinema cameras now, there seems to be a trend towards a smaller and smaller package in the actual camera itself. And we're getting more out of a smaller package. The Sony FX6, which I'm shooting on now and is this bad boy that I had in the intro. The Sony FX6 is a tiny camera that delivers a serious amount of punch, and its main rival competitor, the C70, is exactly the same. These cameras are almost getting close to what an old DSLR used to look like. But looking beyond these specs of cameras, when considering the more high-end, those Reds and Arris, they've also been coming down in the Arri Alexa Mini and the Red Komodo. These camera packages are actually as small as the FX6. They're tiny little cubes, and it really got me thinking, how is this going to actually change the world of filmmaking for better or for worse? In my opinion, it'll be better. These smaller camera packages have become more powerful and also more affordable, which means filmmakers can get amazing results and the same high quality image in their camera than what used to take a full crew of people to operate on set. It enables us as creators to tell more stories, but also I think the nimble nature of those small cameras means we can just pick them up and just run and gun and go out and create in ways that we couldn't before. And also on the larger cinema camera end, Sony's just released something in between the FX9 and the Venice, the Sony Kinder Bueno, as I like to call it. I don't actually know what it's called. The Sony Burano, not the Kinder Bueno. I prefer my version anyway. The advancement in sensor technology, image stabilization, low light performance, and also all the spec features that can now go into a tiny camera are pretty insane. But the trend of does size matter and things getting smaller doesn't just stop at cameras. I've also observed in the world of lighting that there's been a big trend towards making lighting fixtures considerably smaller. One of the most notable that I've seen is the Zhiyun Molus 200, which is literally tiny, and it can amplify the power out of it up to a 300 watt brightness, which is something that you would need a pretty big fixture to do before. But this thing is literally like the size of a lunchbox. For me in the filmmaking that I do, in my experience, the more I've tried to rig up a camera and use a bigger, bulkier package, and same with other gear as well, lighting fixtures, bigger stands, bigger this, bigger that, there's a real trade-off between what is actually getting in your way of your creativity and what is actually necessary. Sometimes you need bigger, bulkier, sturdier kit to have peace of mind that when you put your expensive bit of kit on it, it's going to hold it, whether that's a light or a camera or anything else for that matter. However, a lot of the time, if you're a run and gun filmmaker, you want to be spending more time creating and less time worrying about setting up big fixtures of gear And I think actually having a smaller package can be really helpful. I personally remember a time I was doing a short documentary. It was like a 24-hour challenge that these 3 military guys had done. I had the Sony FX6 and I had it rigged out, and I had a side cage on it, and I had a handle. And I remember thinking, I actually don't like this. I actually prefer having a smaller camera package which is more nimble, where I can get around. So I think it's really important to, as a filmmaker, assess the kind of work that you're doing and think about, is smaller better for me? There's also the other factor to think about, which is a little bit of filmmaker vanity and also perception. So if you're doing client work and you turn up with really small gear, there's a bit of a perception potentially that the client that you're working with is going to feel like you're not really bringing all the big guns in terms of the gear that you've got, or providing the most value because your gear is smaller. And although that's a weird thing, it is a thing. However, for me, the more and more that I get stuck into this filmmaking world, this filmmaking game, and find more of a love for it, the more I'm finding that I'm enjoying having more power in a small package in all of the different gear that I'm utilizing. I don't want the gear to get in the way of my creative flow and cause me a headache. I think it's exciting for us as filmmakers when looking at the technology that's coming out in such small packages and the new innovations, because the potential that we have to create now is pretty unlimited. You can literally get a red cinema camera that's a tiny little cube, and you can add fixtures onto it from DJI now using LiDAR technology, add autofocus, like immaculate autofocus to it. You could also put that camera on a drone and bomb it into the sky and get some of the most insane FPV cinema camera footage ever. Now, just thinking about only 5-10 years ago, the drone technology, the camera technology, all those things still had a requirement to be in a bigger package. It was miles away. But now for filmmakers at all different levels, we can get access to things that before you'd need to spend thousands of pounds on crew and helicopter hire and camera hire. And that's just there. And it's so much more achievable for indie filmmakers to get much more creative and tell better stories. So for me, I'm actually really excited about the world of this more miniature gear filmmaking trend, and I'm excited to see where that goes, because I think the more compact but also the more powerful these compact bits of gear get, the more freedom to create that gives to us filmmakers, and that can only be a good thing. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Are you enjoying this trend towards the smaller gear packages, and what have been some of your experiences that you've had? You know, where has this kind of helped you or has this hindered you? Let me know, punch a comment in the comment section and we'll get a chat going. If you enjoyed this video, do me a sweet one, drop a little headbutt on that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.